and my dog disliked jumping in the water. So she jumped into the water at the embankment on the Trent, swam around. She took water on board because she just did when she swam. And then the next day she was really poorly, and that illness went on, progressed. She went to the vets, and it turned out she had liver failure caused by leptospirosis from the water. She had overnight care, sort of on a drip basically, and she passed away a couple of days later. But that was directly caused by the river, and taking on that water from the river, from the pollution in the Trent.
Hi, my name's Freddie Medley, and over the past few years, kayaking has become my life. So my free time in, around and often under the River Trent. However, there's a problem with the water, which affects everyone, and it's water pollution. In this documentary, I'm going to investigate the effects water pollution has on people. I'm going to do this by interviewing kayakers like myself, and an environmental specialist. I'm also going to find out how the problem became so bad, and find out what our politicians are doing, if anything, to fix the issue. Water is essential to life, yet we here in the UK let it get mistreated to an unthinkable extent.
I generally get ill a couple of times a year from the Trent, from kayaking. So I go down to kayaking probably once a week or once a fortnight, more so in the summer when apparently the water's better. But that's not the case in my experience. I seem to get more ill in the summer. That's probably maybe because I'm doing it more. But I've had parasite in my eye, which ate part of my cornea. I've had sickness, endless sickness bugs, where I've actually missed out on events that I paid for. So the Euro Open last year, I competed on the Saturday, and then the Sunday's more like a fun day, and I missed out on the fun day because I was poorly from the Saturday. I used to think I was quite immune to it, but it's got worse, I think. And it's like, I've been kayaking 10 years, and I've never been as ill as I have in the last 2 from kayaking. So it's definitely got worse over the last 2 years than it has in the previous 7 or 8.
Over you, from this moment on, I'll be crying.
It's no good turning on the waterworks after Wednesday. Register by then, or you'll miss out on the extras you could get if you become an H2 owner. To register for incentives and a prospectus in the Watershare office, call 0272 272 272, no later than Wednesday.
The year was 1989, and the controversial Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, just passed a new bill making all of Britain's waterways privatised.
France to the Philippines, from Jamaica to Japan, from Malaysia to Mexico, from Sri Lanka to Singapore, privatisation is on the move.
Surprisingly, this actually helped in the short term, but as you'll soon find out, ended up hurting Britain in the long term. Before privatisation, Britain was known as the dirty man of Europe due to the poor quality of our water. It wasn't until 1988, when Margaret Thatcher delivered her speech on the environment, would things begin to change, as water companies began investing large amounts of money into clean-up projects. However, this wouldn't last forever, as the water companies were overlooking a massive issue. A large majority of the pipes that are in use today date back to the Victorian era, and so were designed for a population of 37 million, and not the 67.9 million people who live in the UK now. Due to this issue, any excess waste from our sewers is forced to be pumped into our rivers and seas. However, when there's a storm, or anything that could cause a flood, the water companies are forced to release even more sewage into our rivers and seas, as the ancient waterways are not designed for this large influx of water. Although the ancient sewage pipes are a very big reason as to why our waterways are so disgusting, they are not the only reason. So I've agreed to meet up with Jane Dutton, an environmental specialist, who will give us a deeper insight into the issue.
There are so many effects of water pollution both on people and on the environment. With people, there's a huge number of waterborne diseases. We've got harmful pathogens and parasites that can cause illness, things like gastroenteritis, cholera, hepatitis and dysentery, all really unpleasant, quite third world things that we don't really associate with us, but we're starting to see because of this water pollution. I think certainly making our systems more viable, we need to invest in the infrastructure so that we can cope when there's rain. We know rain happens, we know climate change is a thing and it's only going to get more, so we need to put in a lot of money into the infrastructure so that we can cope when it rains. Perhaps to have a separate sewage system and an outlet flow so that those two things are very different, and we have to start treating our rivers with respect.
Now that we know quite a lot about the issue, how it affects people and how it's caused and how we can solve it, I've decided to meet up with a few politicians to see what they're doing about the issue.
Really important. It's something that residents raise with me all the time. I meet regularly with people like Severn Trent, who obviously do our water and waste stuff in the region, a lot recently in Mansfield because we've had this big project around drainage and they've spent a lot of time with us in Mansfield trying to tackle flooding in particular. So yeah, it has been an important issue and one that we've tried, I think, to tackle in government over the last couple of years.
Water pollution is so important to me, and I think it should be so important to all of us because it's the thing that keeps us alive. It's the most crucial resource we have in this world, and I think it's so important that we keep it clean and also keep it available to everyone.
I don't believe privatisation is the reason. As I said, it's been happening for 100 years, long before the water companies were privatised. I think it's more acutely visible now, and it's also a bigger problem because we've got a more industrialised society, we've got more people, we've got more waste, and all of that has to go somewhere. So what I think is that over a period of 20, 30 years, probably policy and public interest and investment hasn't kept up with the pace of the change in the problem or the increase in the problem. And that's a huge challenge we now need to fix, but you are talking tens of billions of pounds to fix, so it's not something that's going to be done overnight.
Yes, privatisation is responsible for the majority of the problems that we face today, unfortunately. These are public services. They should be controlled by the public, by democratically elected representatives. They should not be run for profit. It makes no sense to me that water, the most valuable resource in the world, is managed in a way that makes money for shareholders.
It's never enough, and there's loads more to do. I think we recognise that it's a huge issue. It clearly has been a very emotive issue for a lot of people, and it's clearly causing increasing problems for all the reasons I've talked about in terms of population, more waste, got to go somewhere, and just with the passage of time that makes rivers more polluted, oceans more polluted. So it's a bigger and bigger issue to tackle. But I do think that this government, and the reason it's now such a political football in some senses, is because this government's the first government ever actually try and do anything about it. Going back, as I say, only 3 years now since we started to measure it. We spent many, many hundreds of millions of pounds putting all the infrastructure in to measure sewage discharge, to start to track that, start to hold companies accountable for it. And now we're putting in a long-term plan for water that delivers many billions of pounds of investment in improving the infrastructure, because you can't do it overnight.
You're asking the wrong person here. Do I think the Conservative government's doing enough? They're doing enough to get themselves booted out at the next election. They have absolutely failed our communities. I remember when David Cameron and Nick Clegg came into office in 2010. I remember George Osborne, the Chancellor, then standing outside 10 Downing Street proudly announcing that he was going to cut hundreds of billions of pounds worth of funding from our communities. And now, for the last 14 years, through all of those prime ministers that we've had, the chaos of Brexit, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and now Rishi Sunak, we have seen a chaotic approach to public service. We've seen people putting their own personal careers ahead of our communities, and that's awful, and the best thing we can do is go to the ballot box whenever that general election comes and get them out. I think they have destroyed our communities. I don't think that they are necessarily bad or evil people, but the management style and the solutions that they're proposing are dangerous.
Although a lot is being done to do with this issue, it doesn't mean we should relax, as if we don't all agree to make a change, we could easily become the dirty man of Europe once again.